All right, hope you guys got some good tips on the do's of dating and interviewing.
And some insight into the mind of 5 meatheads.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Captain Meathead right there.
Thank you very much.
Let's go into the don'ts of dating as they compare to the don'ts of interviews. There's some decent ones here. Don't number 1, never call someone more than once a day unless they reply. Desperation and instability are huge turnoffs. Pretty true to interviewing.
Desperation is a pungent cologne.
Yeah.
Unless it's important, you can call more than once.
So from a candidate's perspective, okay, you finish your interview, what's appropriate as far as reaching back out and connecting until they get back in touch with you?
Call
What's
your
appropriate?
recruiter once a day.
One thank you note, and then call us. One thank you note to the company,
Agreed.
and that's it. Other than that, talk to us.
Yeah.
Okay. If you
But how long-
really want to know, what's a good technique for getting an answer?
Talk to us.
But how many times do they call you?
So, I'm going to shoot myself in the foot here.
Yeah, you are.
And I've had these candidates that'll do it, that'll call me 10 times a day. I'd rather you call me 10 times a day, and I might get a little annoyed with you, and chances are I'll tell you. But I might get a little annoyed with you, but I'd rather you call me 10 times a day than call the company 10 times a day. Send the client one email, copy me on it, and call me as many times as makes you feel good.
And then we'll call the client.
And
sometimes,
we'll
too.
call the client and worry about bugging them.
Yeah, stalkers are the worst.
Yeah. But from the perspective of working with a recruiter, call us as much as often. We're cool with desperation. It's fine for us. From a client's perspective, if you're not working with us, one thank you note. I think there's one other thing you could do that's appropriate. Put them to a decision by saying something like, if you actually are interviewing with other companies, you have an offer, you're being put to a decision, but I'm really more interested in you. I think letting them know that is an okay thing as well. So 2 contacts after an interview is probably as much as it should ever get.
Yeah.
Yeah, within your first 2 weeks, one thank you note, and after that, like, if you're not getting a response, feel free to stalk them.
They're just not that interested.
Yeah.
I mean, they know what they're doing. They'll hire you if they're interested.
It almost seems like all of our all the candidates really should, candidates who really want a job really should read this. I don't know, the girl book, they're really not that into you. Like, it almost needs you to engage yourself. At 2 weeks, unless your recruiter's telling you, okay, your hiring manager's out of town, you can expect these things.
It's over.
All the signs, are there. I mean, be intelligent.
Okay. Don't number 2. Never tell lies to your date or pretend anything about your life that isn't true. So don't misrepresent.
It'll show up in your interview. If it doesn't show up in your interview and you manage to snake by, they're going to catch you on your job, and that's
I
almost
agree,
worse.
but that doesn't mean that you have to leave. You have to put your whole life on the table the first time you meet someone, or even the second time. Or
That's a good one. There's a
Great
don't. There's
point.
a further.
I think
don't
as long
down
as
the
there's
list.
no way you can get caught, you should lie. Telling people that I'm the heir to their Quaker Oats fortune, I mean, that's worked for me in the past. Yeah. White lies are good though, Can't find any reason to compliment. You should compliment anyway, Same thing with the company.
I guess it goes back into the don't tell them you're interested if you're not interested.
Yeah, maybe. Let me rethink that one. Get back to you guys on that.
Okay, think about that one.
Thank you,
I
Captain
will.
Meathead.
I'm gonna ponder.
I'd say even one more step further than don't tell lies is don't. Well, this will go a little bit further. Don't give away too much about yourself at the start. So kind of pace the information that you give up. The thing that I really like is don't share your excess baggage ever, really. I mean, when you're on a first date, I think the worst thing you can possibly do is talk about your exes.
Yeah.
What went wrong and how it didn't work out and badmouth them.
Nah.
Same thing on an interview. I mean, the worst thing you can do is badmouth your employer, because then they're like, oh, well, if you leave me, you're going to badmouth me, aren't you?
Yeah, crying's a bad idea too. For both interviews and first dates.
Wow. Yeah, I got nothing to follow that.
Agree.
Woohoo! Made grand silent. That's the first.
That doesn't happen very often. Yeah, no, that's perfect. Like I said, no crying on the first date.
No, that's true though. I mean, no matter what situation, and you don't want to give away too much. It's that delicate balance of, like I said, showing people that you're interested in, but not, getting too far into detail. You don't want to give up too much of yourself, regardless if it's a first date or an interview. You always have to put your kind of best foot forward and represent that best, vision of yourself. When you get to a point with someone where you've known them for 6 months, you're comfortable, then you can tell them, you can release whatever you want, whatever you feel comfortable with. But on a first date, it's good impressions, and that's the bottom line.
But on that note, that being said, that doesn't mean that you should lie about something.
That's true.
You shouldn't lie and say that something didn't happen or that you haven't had this situation. If they confront you about it and they say, have you had this, or whatever it may be, you tell them about it.
I think a good example is if you got into an argument with your manager because you guys couldn't get along and you got yourself fired, there's no reason to post all over your resume, got fired by my manager.
Right.
But at the same time, like, you can just put, like, oh, I left X company in May of '07, and if somebody asks you point blank, why did you leave?
Yeah.
You gotta tell them, I got in an argument with my manager, we couldn't see eye to eye, I lost.
Yeah.
Got fired. Like, but you don't need to go around being like, oh yeah, the last company I got canned, couldn't get along with that asshole who was my manager. There's no need for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But you don't need to go painting it all over the billboards, but at the same time, be honest, be forthcoming, people will appreciate that.
Well, there's nothing wrong with making, mistakes in your career past. I mean, it's going to happen. No one's perfect. Everyone, does things that maybe they're not supposed to or whatever. But, if you do get called out on it, yeah, be honest and let them know. But I think it's also important to let them know what you've taken from it. You know what I mean? If you got fired and you're like, yeah, I got fired, and then you're silent, you don't say anything. Of course you're shooting yourself in the foot, but you're like, yeah, I had a disagreement with my manager. I ended up getting fired over it, and what I took from that was a very important lesson, and this was the lesson that was learned. I think it's just a maturity issue. You know what I mean? No one's perfect, but as long as you can show that you're kind of growing and have improved yourself and want to do that, I can't see why you would get in, potential employers back.
You're on fire this
I was
episode.
gonna
That
say,
was
thank you.
phenomenal advice.
This was the first date I put
Thank
out.
you. I'm getting second dates with all of you.
Okay, this last one of my personal favorites is know the process, know where you are in the process, and know what to expect at the end of the process, and don't act clueless by saying something like, oh, now I got an offer, now I guess I should start thinking about whether or not I should accept this job. By the time you get an offer, you should know more or less whether or not you want the job or not. You should understand going into an interview process that the light at the end of the tunnel is a marriage proposal. It's an I love you, do you love me? It's I want you to work for me, do you want to work for me? And you should be considering it all the way through the process, not just when the question is asked, because that becomes extremely awkward.
In interviewing, I completely agree. In dating, I don't.
You're-
I think you have to live in the moment, live for the day, live for it. If I like being with her right now, if I like hanging out with her, spending time with her, all's good. And then if it makes sense to that point, then maybe.
I understand the point, but so when you're interviewing, if you know after the first interview that you don't want to work for this company, then you shouldn't continue the interview process.
Okay.
And this may be a perspective from someone who's a little bit older when you start, approaching 30 years old. You can't waste people's time. If you know on a first date, and I'm not saying that you should know, but if you do know on a first date that person is not for you, you end the process. You know what I mean? It's not
going into a first date thinking about marriage is like going into a first interview thinking about retiring at that company. You're not going to, it's going to happen that you might.
Well, it depends on what level you're thinking about it. If you're like looking at every single move she does or thing she does, you're like, would that bug me in 30 years? Of course not. But at the same time, you can pick up like subtle hints, and you can read into things that if it's not going to work, you just can't waste people's time.
Yeah.
Same thing with the company. I mean, it costs these companies time, money, energy to interview people. And if someone's just window shopping, bottom line is it's just not cool. It's not cool in dating. It's not cool in interviewing.
I think with interviewing, maybe the big difference to define is that on occasion you're going to find the girl that you're dating who generally is just in it for fun. Anybody you're interviewing with isn't doing it out of the goodness of their heart. They're doing it because they're you kind of approach dating, and then maybe this is or more rather approach job interviewing. Maybe this is kind of where there is a good differentiation to make. That everybody knows when you go in and you're interviewing for a job, people may be in less degrees of severity of needing to marry and or hire that person, but everybody at the end of the day is looking to get married and or hire somebody. So I think that's a little bit of the difference, is that I so much I agree with you, Pete. Like, I think you kind of have to live dating for the moment, live life as it comes to you. But in interviewing, it needs to be a more conscious, like constantly getting more and more serious. Like if you phone screen, sure, you're just out having a good time on your first date, see what the hell happens.
Right.
Second interview, ought to be getting a little more serious. You ought to actually like them. Full day with the company. You better be really into this person, into this company, and by the time you start talking about offers and such, you better be pretty much in a position where in your mind, if stats add up, you'd be ready to say I love you too. And I think that's kind of the balance that you should know getting into a job interview, that at the end of the tunnel there could be an I love you, Whereas sometimes dating, it's always just going to be dating, I'm having a good time and kicking it. I think probably a little bit of differentiation to make there.
Yeah, the way I always look at it is like, from the beginning, for sure the company's going into it evaluating, is this person right for me or not? I think the candidate should be going into it with that same mind frame. I always look at it like two people that start out on the opposite side of the street, and then every interview they get closer, closer, closer. Once the company decides to extend a job offer, what they're doing is extending their hand forward. It's okay if you say, I don't want to shake your hand, put it down, walk away. It's okay if you say, shake your hand, and then let's go work together. It's awkward if you say, thank you for offering your handship and friendship to me, but I think I'm just going to let it kind of hang there for 2 weeks while I go consider other people's hands for right now, you know?
The
It's
classic Boris, I love you, I don't love you, take my job offer, don't take my job offer.
awkward.
This was a really fun episode of Big TV. I enjoyed this.
Good, till next week.
We're good.